It's time for the Bleed Lows Podcast with your hosts, Alonso and Juan, Alicia Del Valle, and the baby-faced gimmick in the sky, Roger.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here.
And joining us on the carne asada is our padrino, ladies and gentlemen, El Padrino, Ned Colletti, the former general manager of the Dodgers, the man who tells the truth and who's going to hold our hand through this upcoming postseason because the anxiety is already kicking in. Ned, I want to start off with this. First of all, I did not see this coming. With the way this team was just riddled with injuries. And look, you've seen a lot of baseball. I don't know if you've ever seen a starting pitching staff be decimated the way the Dodgers pitching staff was decimated this year. But to end up with the best record, not just in the National League, but the best record in all of Major League Baseball, Ned, I mean, does this say more about the Dodgers or does this say more about the rest of Major League Baseball that a MASH unit who still was able to go ahead and end up with the best record in all of Major League Baseball?
Well, I think it says a lot about the Dodgers. It may say a little bit about the rest of baseball, too. I had one team years ago. I was a young executive that had the same type of rotation breakdown. The 1985 Cubs goes back a million years, but we couldn't maintain it. We couldn't withstand it. We had gone to the LCS against San Diego the year before. Everybody was expended. But that this one reminds me of that, except that the offense of this club and the experience that they've had a ton of experience that other teams are still trying to figure out as they go. I think it played a huge role. When you think about the best record in baseball, that is not easy, especially with what they went through. But they're the best.
Ned, I want to get your opinion on this because Friedman already said earlier in the season that they're definitely going to look into, in the offseason, the injuries that are happening to the starting pitching. Look, everybody, anytime somebody goes down, immediately the trainers are on the hit list, fire all the trainers. But this rash of pitching injuries, I mean, is it training or is it just more so philosophy with I've heard Nomar, I've heard Jerry Hairston, and it's just like these guys throwing as hard as they are throwing, it's just not something that can be sustainable.
No, I think, even when you go to showcase tournaments with high school kids, draft eligible players, it's always about velocity. If you were an 18-year-old pitcher and you could spin a breaking ball and you had a great feel at that age for a changeup and you understood the craft of pitching, if you were throwing 88, 89 miles an hour, nobody'd look at you. You'd end up, maybe not even playing. But if you could throw 98 without command, without a feel for a secondary pitch, with just power versus the hitter, you're going to get drafted high. So I think the emphasis, just my opinion, the emphasis is on velocity. That's not necessarily how you win. There's a long list of guys that didn't throw 98, 97 miles an hour that are in Cooperstown, okay, and have won multiple World Series championships. So I think it's really what lights people up is how fast you throw, and that's not good. I'm not saying that's the Dodgers. I don't know what their plans are or how they go about it, but I can tell you that it's throughout the game, the amount of pitching that is hurt, and what's the common denominator? How hard you throw. So it's got a lot to do with it.
Going back to your days with the Cubs, with the Giants, Did you ever have to do a philosophy change like that for a whole organization? And how would you go about doing something like that?
Well, you set the tone. An organization at the top is going to set the tone for what the expectations are and how you're going to do it. And that's, that can happen. That can, is it going to take meetings and conversations? Sure. But, things don't happen in a vacuum, and things don't just happen suddenly. Anybody that's paying attention has been watching this develop little by little by little for a while. So I'm sure that, if it's the Dodgers and Andrew, or if it's another organization that's going to change philosophy, it's not that they thought of it at the end of September. No, they may have thought of it a year ago at the end of September and continued to gather information and watch and pay attention to detail to come up with the idea that, hey, you know what, we got to adjust something. I mean, you can't have this many pitchers in the game going out all the time. You've got, guys used to work. They used to work part-time jobs in the wintertime to support their families. Guys now take a month off and then they start conditioning. I don't think that in the last 10, 15 years, athletes have more opportunity to be conditioned to perform than they do today. Besides the time off, besides the science of the sport, any sport, but the science of pitching, all those things and all the different techniques and experts that delve into it far deeper than they did early in my career, far, far deeper than the middle of my career, that you have that much information, that many different people who have a really good feel and a scientific approach to how the body works, how the arm works, how the shoulder is affected, and have all these pitchers in Major League Baseball go on the IL. It's an epidemic in a crazy kind of way.
Go ahead, Cody.
Kind of, even piggybacking off what Juan said, it was a couple weeks ago or a month ago when MLB Major League Baseball, they had that rule leak where they were saying maybe in the next year or two they were going to try to stretch starters out as like a minimum. Do you think it's that easy to like change the philosophy of what teams are doing? Because at the end of the day, if they're being brought up through middle school, high school, and the parents are agreeing with it and those travel ball coaches are agreeing with it, like there's really not much Major League Baseball can kind of do if that's the case, right?
I don't think it'll ever happen.
Yeah.
I just don't think it'll happen. Every time anybody has an idea, there's another party that's got a big say on all of this. It's called the Players Association. Are they going to mandate that, hey, you're going to have to throw 6 innings? No. Now, you may have a different combination of your roster where you may be held to having fewer pitchers on your staff. But even that is going to take a lot of work to get to that point. It's where it's evolved to. And, years ago you had 25 and now you got 26. So you got the extra spot. They made one change with bringing up, a roster of 28 players in the month of September. Baseball is the only sport I ever knew, and I might be missing one, that the last month of a season, when people are in the stretch drive, some team could have 40 and some team back in the day could have 25. How would you do that? Would the Rams play with 75 active players against another NFL team? Would the Lakers play with 25 or 30 active players versus another NBA team? It's crazy, but they've managed that, which is a good thing. And they've also, maybe that's the way. I mean, they understand what the issues are. And, you used to hope a guy could give you 7 or 8 strong innings. Then you used to hope they'd give you 6 or 7 strong innings. Now you're hoping for 5 or 6. Sometimes you're hoping for 4. I don't know how many games around the league are started by an opener. So sometimes you're hoping for 3 outs, So it's just evolved, not necessarily slowly, but it's evolved, I think fairly quickly to a different mindset. You have to develop your pitching. You have to get accustomed to pitching 6, 7, 8 innings. You have to get accustomed to pitching the 9th inning. We used to take some of our starters in the minor leagues and have them start the game in the third or the fourth and say, you're going through the ninth. See what that inning feels like. Look at the number of complete games. How many great starting pitchers have pitched 39th innings? Probably not many, right? So, it was important to do, because every inning's got a little bit of a different feel to it. First inning, guys are trying to get established, all go through the entire game. You get to the ninth inning, sometimes the three toughest outs. Sometimes you never get the 3 outs, if you're on the road. So I think it continues to evolve to a lesser level. So until the minor leagues start requiring their starting pitching to give more than 5, 6, 7, you're not going to see it at the big league level. I don't know. I mean, again, going back to the union, I don't think you ever see it at the big league level. You got to pitch 6 innings unless you're hurt and you're going on the IL. No, you've got to condition your athletes to do it physically, but also mentally. It's a different gig. So many times I saw pitchers, when they got through the 5th and they were going to get a W, start looking around, start looking into the dugout like, hey, I gave you 5. It's the old 5 and fly saying. That's what they used to say about the starters, that when guys were going 7 or 8 innings, there were still some that liked the idea of the 5-inning win and get me out of here, the 5 and fly deal. But I think you're going to have to do it from the ground up to get it back to where 6, 7, 8 innings are acceptable. Think how it's not as rare as a no-hitter, but think how many complete games there are in the course of 162 times all the teams.
Not many anymore.
No, hardly anybody.
But yeah, kind of even going with the pitching. Going back to the Dodgers now, obviously everybody knows the starting rotation's been beat to hell and back, especially at the worst time of the year. They're done with Tyler Glass now. He's out with the elbow sprain. Gavin Stone's season's officially over when he got transferred to the 60-day IL. If you can't say the starting rotation's the biggest Achilles heel for this team going into the postseason, what is a concern for this Dodgers team if you had to pick one?
Well, let me talk about the starting pitching just for a second. I'm encouraged by what I've seen the last couple of weeks. I've always had a ton of respect and would always want Walker Buehler on my team. And he has slowly come back to the point where, you know what? You put him in a big game, you got a good chance of winning that game. Yamamoto, fresh, knows how to pitch, can change speeds, got a live fastball with carry to it, but also knows how to change speeds. I think, and Flaherty's been good. I think the starting rotation is, while it's been decreased as to how many choices you have, I think the choices you have are pretty good to more than pretty good. So I'm not sure that's what it would be a concern, but not a bold, bright light concern. I think if I had to pick another one, I would accentuate how important the bottom of the order is. You want Ohtani hitting with somebody on base or 2 people on base. You don't want first base open. You don't want them pitching around Ohtani. You want them having to challenge Ohtani. And I'll take him against anybody in the game. Challenge, right? And so I think the bottom of the order is an area that it's important that they contribute. It's important that there's 1 or 2 on base when Ohtani comes up. Because if you can get 7, 8, and 9 being productive, and they've been better lately, especially Kike. If you get 7, 8, 9 being productive, Ohtani and Mookie and Freddie and Hernandez, that's like 3, 4, 5, and 6 in your lineup. Suddenly now you've expanded this lineup tremendously. You don't get production out of 7, 8, and 9. You're starting most of the time with Shohei with nobody on. You don't want to do that. Guys will pitch different. They will pitch out of the stretch is different than out of the windup to begin with. Also, knowing his run production capabilities, his power capabilities, all those things we've seen for the year, even before he got here, we've seen it. That will affect how a pitcher pitches. You start with nobody on base every time he's up, or most of the time when he's up, they're going to come at it in a different confidence. You start with people on base when he's up, it changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah. Juan, back to you.
Ned, I want to get your opinion on this because back when you were running the show, I feel the adding the wild cards has completely changed the postseason. And many times now, everyone is referring to it as the tournament. Yeah, it was a tournament before, but it's now, adding 4 more teams. It's like March Madness, 68, it's just a complete toss-up. And I think the anxiety kicks in for the Dodgers. I think every fan was just like, all right, yeah, we got the top seed. We need the week, especially with the injuries to Miguel Rojas and Friedman, give him buying more time. But there is that anxiety that the last few years, there's this belief that the week off has really affected them in the playoffs. Doesn't seem to affect the Astros. They seem to have figured it out. But if you're running the show, how would you deal with that week off? Like, do you believe that there is such thing as, we just got cooled off because we were off for a week?
That's a tough question. I'm not big on excuses. And sometimes that can be an excuse. Well, why didn't they win? Well, they had too much time off. Well, I mean, you look at the course of a regular season, a lot of starting pitching, to go back to that topic, they're hoping to pitch on 6 days rest. How many times you see the stats where 6 days rest is far better than 5? 4, almost never, right? So I don't know if that's legit or not. I think I think the combination, I'll buy some of that. The combination of that plus not really being challenged during the regular season, that combination I think is tough. But one of the reasons, I don't mind where the Dodgers are at right now. I think they're sitting in a pretty good spot, is because they were challenged by San Diego until a couple days ago. And so they've had to continue to figure out how to make it through the season with the injuries they've had. And they've also had to figure out how to beat good teams. When you have 105, 100 and whatever, the number is 100 plus, all those years, and you're 10, 15 games up, how many big games have you played? Not many. I mean, you play against a statistic of how many wins. You don't necessarily play 90 big games, 80 big games. You may play 10 big games scattered through 6 months. The fact that they had to play hard until just really a couple days ago, I think is got huge value to them. But I think, going back to the question that was originally asked about this, I think the combination of not coasting, but you're not really extended yourself. You can beat most teams on a daily basis. You almost have to get tired and take your mind off the game to get beat. And that coupled with, okay, and now you've taken 7 or 8 days without a game. Yeah, that's a tough thing. If you play hard throughout the season and you got to compete till 158, 159th game, and then you get a week off, I don't think it's got that much of effect on you. I think it helps you. And you've got to ramp up your practices near the end. You've got to have some real strong practices where you have to compete a little bit. Tough that you can't replicate that. There's no way to replicate a playoff game, not even a regular season game through a live BP or something. But I think that the combination has cost them in the past. I think this year their greatest benefit is the starting rotation has started to pitch better. I think the compete that they've had to have to get through the injuries and have San Diego get better and better and stronger as the year went on, I think that's a benefit to the Dodgers.
Ned, it's been said that managers have to be psychologists when they're managing the clubhouse. But I also think the front office and general managers, and that's because your book, if anybody hasn't read his book, please go check it out. I love when you tell stories of how you dealt with players. So I wanted to ask, So after they clinched, Dave Vassay had an interview with Freddie Freeman. And this was right after he had the ankle injury. But Freddie really sounded tired. And he mentioned stuff about like the fact that he hadn't dealt with injuries his career. Like this is the first time he's ever had an ankle injury. So he doesn't know how he's going to recover from it. We forget that he's been playing with a fractured finger, right? And then, of course, what's happening off the field with his son. And this is the reason why these are great athletes, Ned, because they have the ability to separate that. But have you ever had an instance in the front office where maybe you've had to help to massage a psyche of a player because you know what's going on is in between the ears and not necessarily physically?
Well, I think you're always thinking psychologically. We hired Dana Sinclair, tremendous sports performance expert, to kind of help us with these thoughts and help us with the science of it. She just came out with a great book called Dialed In. I did 40 years. Like I sound like I'm in prison. No, I worked 40 years in baseball, and followed it for the couple that I've been gone, and obviously many years before I started. And probably the last 20 years of my career, probably the second half of my career, the psychology of the athlete, I thought of that more than I thought of anything else. If my day was 18 hours long, and let's say it's 18 hours of work thought process, I'd say easily 12 or 13 of those hours was devoted to this type of conversation, because it's imperative. There's so many things, in my opinion, that work against an athlete being productive throughout 6 or 7 months. Only the best, the absolute best, are able to do it. You got the wear and tear of the season. You got the power of competition. It's not a once in a while thing. It's 162 days out of 183 typically. You got your hands full. It doesn't rest. It doesn't stop. And then you have salaries. If you're hurting, or if you're really getting tired, and this got nothing to do with anybody on the Dodgers. This is just an overall thought. You might be making $200,000 a day or $150,000 a day. What's the worst that's going to happen, right? So I think that the way it's evolved, it's tougher to get people to play the way the Dodgers play, and the compete that they bring all the time. And I think the Freddie Freeman story is, it's a indication that something that we can forget sometimes, and we should never forget it. Everybody's human. Everybody's got other things going on than 4 at bats and taking ground balls, right? Everybody's got more to life. And if we take our mind off of that, or take our eye off of that, we're not being realistic. What him and his family have gone through this summer, I mean, that is incredibly emotional and trying. And think about the thought process that you would have just on that alone with his son, Max. It's everything. And then you add the competition, you add, the expectation. This team plays with massive expectation every year for more than a decade. Okay. I mean, even in my time, we had massive expectation, and we won my last 2 years in 13 and 14, which kind of started this run. But you can never take the psychology of the human being and the athlete human being, or I should say human being / athlete, out of the equation. I think it's a key part of it. How people think and what they go through on a daily basis. It's not fair to discount it. It's not fair to put it into the equation, because it's all real. It's all real.
Go ahead, Cody.
Yeah, you mentioned it already. You kind of kickstarted this current run. The Dodgers have made the playoffs 12 straight seasons. They've won the division 11 times in that time frame. Countless NLCS appearances, World Series appearances. you don't see that too much in sports. How hard is it to just maintain that success? And are you kind of surprised a little bit that the Dodgers, the new ownership when they took over in 2012, they said this is what they wanted to do, but are you any bit surprised that they've actually still kept that promise? And if you look at the outlook for the next 10 years of the Dodgers, it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon.
No, I think when and I know the people that are most of the ownership group I worked for, 3 years in the GM chair and then doing TV for them another 6 or 7. They compete. They compete. I just had a text exchange with Mark Walter the other day, and they are so riveted on entertainment and being successful in victory, no matter what it is. So, am I surprised? I think as somebody who loves sports and has followed it for decade upon decade, I'm not surprised because of who they are and the process they take. But it's going back a little bit to the same topic of the human being inside the uniform. It is so hard to win. And that, to me, I'm not saying that it would surprise me that they've done what they've done, because I respect the process, and I know the people that are making decisions, Andrew and Stan and on and on. But the difficulty in winning and competing year after year after year after year can never be underappreciated. We've had great sports teams in the city of LA for a long time. Very few, I don't think any, have really had the run that this team has had. Okay. Lakers, great teams, iconic franchise, probably 4 different eras of sustained success, but up and down. The last 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, kind of up and down a little bit. Would you disagree or agree?
No, you're spot on. It's not what the Dodgers are doing.
No, it's hard to do. And it's no knock on the Lakers. It's just hard to win. It's hard to do it. You've got all sorts of things coming and going. You've got a sport that's got free agency. People can leave, because of salary, or because of playing time or whatever, location, whatever, but that they've been able to do it is remarkable. It can never, ever be taken for granted. And winning the World Series is a whole nother episode. That's a whole nother thing to try and do, because you have the best are left. And in 10 days, in a week or 10 days, the best of the best will be left. And you keep on shrinking who's still playing. And what they have done is remarkable. It's one of the greatest runs that I've ever seen, and I've gotten a chance to see it firsthand and up close. It is great, but you think about the process and how they think. And I'm taking zero credit for this, but people asked me after the Diamondbacks swept the Dodgers last year, do you think that they'll sign Ohtani? Do you think that they'll sign Yamamoto? Do you think that they'll get more starting pitching? And I said, whatever they want to do, they'll do, including Ohtani, Yamamoto, and as it turned out, Glasnow. So that's how they're constituted. That's what they do. They measure out how long it's going to take and what it's going to cost, and they know how to manage their money, and they know how to sell entertainment, and they do it on a nightly basis. And it's one of the great stories in sport, I think, even though it's an iconic franchise, and people think that this is what's expected. Yankees are as iconic as the Dodgers. Where have they been the last 12 years? Up and down, right? It's not that easy. It's not that easy what the Dodgers have done.
Yeah, Juan, back to you.
Ned, obviously, you mentioned the unicorn, and of course, we can't do an episode without talking about Ohtani. But I want to take a different approach. Obviously, what he did this year is historic. But this past week, and actually for the past few weeks, I've seen a lot of emotion coming out of him. And Dodger fans have always told us, especially after they come up short the last 2 seasons in the postseason, that what the Dodgers need is they need somebody in there who plays with passion, who shows it, who's demonstrative. You have been around a lot of clubhouses. I did not have Ohtani being that guy on my bingo card. It seems like when he hit home runs and he's pointing out at the dugout, that his teammates are reacting and that energy is being transferred to them. Is that a real thing in clubhouses, Ned? Do you need not, I mean, this is a really bad way of saying a rah sis boom bob, but a guy that has a level that can be interpreted as intensity, that if someone's intense, that you adapt that, you take it. It's like through osmosis.
Well, let me ask you two guys. Let's say that you had you were doing 20 hours of a podcast every day for a month. And on the 31st day, somebody came in full of life, and you were getting weary. You were getting mentally tired. And somebody came in really fired up and excited about, talking, or excited about whatever. And it would rejuvenate you, right? It would energize you. I think when you have players that show emotion like that, I think it energizes. Not that they need it, but I think it adds to whatever they already have. And, I think it's great. He has been, I said this a couple weeks ago, of all the athletes I've ever watched up close, I can think of none, zero. And people say this in sports all the time, but I'm not just saying it to say it. I cannot think of one that came into a season with the expectation that he came into this season with. A contract like none other, deferred, whatever, but still the value of it, the length of it, like came in with massive expectation. I've seen 90% fail to get close to expectation. I've seen another 9.9% that meet expectation. I've only seen one that exceeded all expectation and continues to get better as the year goes on. Again, it's hard to find. I can't find another one, but it's hard to really conceptualize what he's been able to do with what he's been asked to do, or what he's been, quote, expected to do. And that to me is the most remarkable thing he has. Speed and power. If you're scouting, you'll find speed, you'll find power. You'll rarely find speed and power. But that's what he has, along with now the ability to hit in different spots of the lineup and to do damage in close games. When he went to 50-50, think about that game. There's usually a buildup, right? You're trying to beat the 61 home runs of Roger Maris or the Babe at 60. It's 55, 50. It's like this slow walk towards history, right? Everybody's glued to it. This guy just ran right past it. It'd be like running a 9-second flat 100 meters. It wasn't even close to what somebody else had done. He just went right past it with 10 RBIs in one game. And the home runs in Florida and all that. How do you do that? How do you, I find it remarkable what he's done. And, he's had some distraction. Interpreter, we know all that story, There's been distraction, expectation. I teach at Pepperdine, and I had three of the great global marketing people from the Dodgers Zoom into class this past summer. And the amount of people in Japan that are flocking to California and Dodger Stadium, it's remarkable. That they have tours in Japanese, that the menu at the ballpark has got Japanese delicacies on it. I mean, think about the pressure to perform like that on a daily basis, knowing how many people are not going out of their way, but how many people are coming to see the greatest show they've ever seen. And, they leave saying, that's the greatest show I've ever seen. How do you do it? He's been going on and on here, but what he has done is absolutely remarkable. And I'm going to say one more thing. I would be more surprised than not if they can get through one round, and maybe even in the first round, you'll see him on the mound.
You beat me to it, Ned. I was going to bring that up. I wanted to end with that because I heard you on ESPN LA on that interview, and you are like, you said that statement with such confidence. But the other thing that I really admired about you is you were the only one that was pumping the brakes, because everybody would immediately right after Miami, when he had that 6-for-6 game, saying he's like the greatest player that ever lived. And I remember hearing you going, look, you seem to be the only one who wasn't a prisoner of the moment and being like, hey, guys, there's a lot of great players that played baseball in history. Yes, if he keeps doing this, yeah, he will eventually. But Ned, I have to ask you, he has been on a tear these last few weeks. If he goes into the playoffs and has a Corey Seager run from like 2020 or something like that, I've never been one to believe that one player, especially in baseball, can carry you. But he has really made me doubt it, because I was sitting there going, how are they going to overcome all these injuries? And seeing how this guy's been playing, I'm like, maybe it's him. Maybe he is this special that he's going to carry that. I mean, what would an epic postseason run for a Shohei do for his legacy?
Well, it's already sky high, but there's no limit to how high the sky is, and he's got the personality, he's got the competitive DNA, he's built to do it, and he thinks to do it, and he can slow his mind down to figure out in that split second. There's a million split seconds in the game of baseball that people got to make a decision. He's one of the absolute best in that split second, times thousands and thousands and thousands. So, yeah, I mean, that he would close out a series, that he would close out the last series or pitch the 7th or 8th inning, if that's where the game had to be stopped because 3, 4, and 5 were coming up. Again, if he's not feeling any pain right now, if he's on a regular schedule and he's throwing and he feels good about it and the trainers feel good about it, I just have no reason to tell anybody what they're thinking. Zero reason. And you don't have to put him on the roster as a pitcher. You can do whatever you feel like doing. So are you going to see that? If they play at least one series, 2 series, and maybe just one even, I wouldn't doubt. Are you going to see him back to back? No. Are you going to see him extended out? No. But are you going to see him for a valuable out, 2 outs, 3 outs maybe? If he's healthy, don't bet against it.
Cody, you got anything before we let Ned go?
No, I'm riding the Ned Colletti train on that. I've been calling for that for a while.
I know. Doesn't it feel like, doesn't it feel like El Padrino knows something? Like, he says it with such confidence. Like, he knows it's going to happen. Because you're absolutely right, Ned. The Dodgers don't owe it to us. And for the most part, the Dodgers never really tell us anything anyways, because the next day it's like in the newspaper. There's a new version of the story coming out. But the way I heard you the first time when you said, oh, he's pitching, he's got, but it's exactly what you said. I mean, you coming off what we saw in the World Baseball Classic, a moment that I felt really stopped time, him versus Trout. Like, you couldn't have not have scripted this. Now, let's say you have a Dodgers-Yankees World Series, Game 7, bottom, top of the 9th, and all of a sudden you see Shohei pick up the ball off the mound. I think it would break TV sets and break minds everywhere.
Well, think about leading up to that he leaves the dugout, the cameras are on, and suddenly he's not in the dugout. He's not he doesn't waiting for an at bat. And suddenly he shows up on the bullpen mound. I mean, if you're the other team, you haven't seen this guy pitch for how long? When did he last pitch in Anaheim? June? I don't even know. June or July a year ago? Nobody's seen him pitch for well over a year. And what you saw, back in the WBC and all that, like, what is everybody thinking? They're thinking, oh boy, we got to figure this out quick. And I'm sure that's still, they'll watch old videos just in case But again, the video is like it's like throwing live BP and thinking that that's a real game. You can't replicate anything in live BP or video. You can get a feel, but the moment in time, my goodness, it was a clinch situation or a big moment in a playoff game at Dodger Stadium, and this happens. You could be anywhere in LA and you'd hear it.
Hey, Roger, make sure you clip this, because when this happens, we are going to let everyone know that the Padrino in September was calling it. This is how the World Series is going to end. We're going to make sure, because
I didn't say the World Series is going to end like that. I said I wouldn't be surprised if he pitches key moments 9, 8, 7, some point in time. Because if he's feeling good, how bad does he want to win a World Series?
Exactly. I mean, I know a lot of baseball players get the credit, get a bad rap because of what you said. It's like you guys make a lot of money. You don't care if you win or lose. But to see that guy spent 6 years of his career not even playing the postseason, and he comes over here, and I know that he has a really good poker face, but it really feels, especially the way this guy turned it on, that not only, all right, we made the playoffs, I want to win the division. It's what you mentioned earlier, Ned, this drive to be great that I think we've seen from very few athletes is something that's very rare and that we should really not take for granted.
Oh, no. There are great, great athletes. There's many people in Hall of Fames, even probably have a handful of rings. But those that compete above the rest are a rare breed. Just a rare, rare group. Below them are Hall of Famers and champions. But those that compete to the utmost and have that skill level are I think rare. That doesn't mean nobody else is competing. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the elite are elite for a reason. Love them or hate them. Tom Brady with the Patriots, elite for a reason. Kobe, elite for a reason. On and on. Wayne Gretzky years ago with the Kings, and Edmonton before that, and St. Louis and New York after that. Elite for a reason. That's, Mookie, elite for a reason. It's Kirsch, in his day, elite for a reason. And I think that what he has shown us is that he is definitely elite in all aspects. Can he strike out in a big at bat? Sure. Can he? I mean, that's part of life. But I'd still take him on the team I was rooting for or working for every day.
All right, Ned, we're going to let you go, but we're leaving you on. We're going to put you on the spot on the way out.
Yeah,
I know you had already said that the bottom of the lineup needs to, perform, and you think they're in a good spot with the starting pitching. But if things go bad for the Dodgers in the postseason, is it the fact that the bottom of the lineup didn't hit, or that the starting pitching was bad? Like, what could derail all of this in the postseason?
Well, anything can derail anybody. I mean, I can't tell you what's going to derail anybody. You never know, and it's rare that it's a question I can't answer. I will say that it's never one play. It's never one pitch. It's never one at bat. It's never one defensive miscue, whatever. It's never one. You look back on games, and there's typically many, many crossroads through the course of one game. I think back to one of my, I think it was 13. It's either it was, I'm sorry. It goes back even further than that. It was either in 08 or 09 in Philadelphia, where Jimmy Rollins triples in the 8th inning. And, we lose the game. And then we lose game 5 the next day, and we're done. Might have been 09. And everybody says, wow, that at bat, that cost us the game. No, not really. Did it add to it? Yeah, it added to it. But if you look back at that game, We had runners in scoring position a handful of times and didn't cash it in. We could have had a 5 or a 6 run lead at that point in time, so that Jimmy Rollins could hit it, into the seats at Citizens Bank Park, and we still would have had a 2 or 3 run lead. So it's never one play, one player, one pitch, one hit, one miscue. Baseball is full, like any sport. It's full of hundreds of crossroads in every encounter. So, but what's going to derail a team? I don't know. Poor play, poor execution. It can happen. But anyway.
We can't thank you enough for coming on, Padrino. I always feel so much more comfortable. Like, you have such a calm, because I feel like you've seen every situation before in baseball where you're just like, relax. Like, why are you having a conniption over this?
It's a lot easier now than it was.
Sitting in that office. How many times
on national TV, watching a game like this? Because I was saying stuff that I never wanted the camera, if they happen to take a picture up in the booth, to see what I was saying. So a lot calmer today than in the past. But you know what? When the talent that they have and the approach that they have and the preparation that they have, tough to have more.
Well, I appreciate your time. I know we went over, and I apologize. I love hearing your insight. And like I said, the calm before the storm. But once game 1 starts, it's going to be a different story. But again, we can't thank the great El Padrino, ladies and gentlemen, Ned Colletti. Ned, is there where can our listeners, our viewers, follow you on social media? And because I know you're doing a lot of stuff, like you were at Legends Attic just a few weeks ago. I mean, you're always. Like, you're a man of the people, right? You just gotta
stay busy. I gotta stay busy. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram. You got the tag up on the screen there. Hey, and if you want to do this in a couple weeks, as we see things start to unfold, give me a shout. We'll come back on for another half hour, 45 minutes, and.
Oh, you just doomed yourself right there, Ned, because Roger's going to hold you to that right now.
I'm not talking to you guys. You guys are good. So
thank you, Ned. So that's going to do it. All right, that's going to do it for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. A big thank you once again to El Padrino.
This episode has been brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here.